Hello, my name is Doug Lynch. I'm a senior scientist at LI-COR, and in this video we're going to talk about supplying preconditioned gases to the inlet of the LI-6800 console. There are two options for doing so. One is the auxiliary air inlet, which is located right here. The other location is prior to the filter at the bottom of the filter cover, which is right here, noted by this hose barb here. The reason you would supply conditioned air is if, for a given experiment, you want to have a supply of air that has a known concentration or no concentration of a particular gas that you're studying. So a classic example would be to use a tank of low or no oxygen to suppress photorespiration. The differences between these two locations are where they are in the airstream once inside the console. So this first one here at the air inlet is upstream of both the pump and the CO2 scrubbing chemicals. So you would have the ability to scrub CO2 using this one if you needed to, but you also would need to leave the pump on, and in that situation oversupply your tank air and let the pump pull what it needs to not cause any pressure issues through the system. If you do not need to scrub CO2 and you have a clean, well-regulated air source, then the auxiliary air inlet is probably a better choice. It's after the pump and after the CO2 scrubbing, but in that scenario you'll have a nice clean air source. You can still control water vapor, and you'll have nice constant flow rates. So we'll zoom in to these components and show a little bit about how you would set this plumbing next. Okay, so this is a closer view of where the plumbing changes occur. So let's start with if you choose to use the auxiliary air inlet, where you have a clean tank supply of likely CO2 free, or at least a constant CO2. And I should mention that in either case, you still have access to the CO2 injector and can control CO2 concentrations as you normally would, and no matter which plumbing option you choose. But if you do want to use the auxiliary air inlet, it's physically simply a matter of removing this plug here, which you can use either a wrench or a flathead screwdriver, and replacing it with this hose barb, which is in your spare parts kit. And it can just be mostly hand tightened. And then a wrench will finish that tightening. And then you would just insert bevel line tubing, which is in your spare parts kit, onto that barb. Now I will note that there is a limitation of flow rate and pressure at this point. So if you do choose this option, you need to make sure your upstream plumbing from your tank has a pressure and or a flow regulator to keep the flow less than 2.5 liters per minute, or the pressure less than 28 kilopascals, which is about 4 psi. And your tank supplier can most likely help you with what you would need to achieve that. So that's all you would need to do to use the auxiliary air inlet. Similarly, if you were to choose to want to have the ability to scrub CO2, then you would add this hose barb at the bottom of the filter here, which this just threads into this part right here. And in this option, because the pump will still need to be active, then the typically best way to set this up is to have a T right before this, such that your tank is supplying more air than the console needs, and the console pump will pull air from that airstream. So the caveat in this case is to ensure that the flow you supply is greater than what the 6800 console pump requires, so that all of the air is coming from your controlled source. If that flow rate from your supply drops below what the 6800 pump pulls in, then you'll be pulling in ambient air as well, and it will cause error in your measurements. So in either case, that's about all you need to change for the plumbing, and you'll be ready to go. One quick note about using the auxiliary air inlet. If you or a colleague were to want to use the instrument without using the external air supply to return to the normal method, then you would need to remove that hose barb and replace that plug. Without doing that, all of the air, when the pump is on, will exit that port and not be presented to the sensor head. So make sure you have that plug in place when using it for typical operation. All right, thanks for watching this video. Should you have further questions, the flow diagrams and more information on this is available in our manual and on our website, and feel free to contact us or your local distributor for any other questions.